All right, so we want to talk about the death spiral, or the general sequence of events that happen when you kill over. Again, this is typically in a hospital, typically in ICU, and a whole host of things can set this off. Classically, it's infection, at least where I work. But anyway, let's kind of run through the whole thing. So generally, there's an event that results in some shock. Which again, what is shock? Shock is organ hypoperfusion. And this is chased with the prototypical shock stuff, which is, again, blood pressure is low, your respiratory rate is high, your O2 can get low, and all of that's going to lead to you being altered. So you get hypotensive, you get a case of the can't breathe goods, and you get altered. So what happens after that? Well, if you get all three of those things, or four of those things, whatever that is, you end up on a vent almost every single time. So now that you're on the ventilator, we've got a lot of other stuff going on. So remember, the ventilator can lead to some versions of poor perfusion related to, hindering cardiac output, particularly from the right heart. And this can contribute to hypotension. So, and also you have hypoxia. This hypotension and hypoxia that are happening classically on the ventilator are mitigated by doing what? Adding vasopressors and increasing the O2. So those two things happen. Despite this, the next step, or the next thing that typically falls, is you develop some renal failure. So renal failure. And so why does this happen? Well, you've got that hypotension that's being driven or drives poor renal perfusion. And you also have hypoxia, which essentially contributes to poor oxygen delivery to the kidney. And remember, the renal medulla has a oxygen tension of about 2 to 3, somewhere there, somewhere in the sub 5 range. So whenever you get severely hypoxic, that is going to further impair the kidney's function, as well as the poor renal perfusion or poor blood delivery. So now that you've got the renal failure, what are you going to see? You're going to see some volume overload and acidosis. And remember, this acidosis and volume overload are also going to further contribute to the hypotension. So that's going to worsen the hypotension. And we're going to have to make those things better. And how are we going to do that? Oh, well, good. We're going to do the big old CRT, the big green machine, or some version of HT, to essentially clear the acidosis and help with the volume overload, which all of that will help the hypoxia and hypotension to some degree, but they won't be able to fix it again, because this is the death spiral, because you got to end with dying. So then after you do all that, you're going to end up with progressive hypotension. So progressive hypotension. And this is just essentially you're doing everything you can to keep their blood pressure up, and it's not working. The way this manifests itself is increasing pressors. So you got escalating pressor doses despite being on CRT, despite being on a lot of vent, despite doing everything you can to manage acidosis and volume overload, and you're not making anything better. And then you end up dying. So that's how we end up here, the death cycle. And that is the death cycle.